Now, will we get some small carrots in here because they're planted so thick? Probably so. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a fantastic day. It is Saturday, November 25th here in South Georgia. And on today's video, I want to show you some of the awesome things we've got going on in our raised bed garden here, give you an update on a few things, contemplate whether or not we should thin our carrots, and then we've got one more thing to plant. We're going to try to get some parsnip seeds in the ground. So let's start out on this end where we have this beautiful Ageratum that is just thriving in this fall weather. Now this stuff will be toast as soon as we get our first frost, but we're just enjoying it as long as we can. The bees are having a heyday out here today on all these blooms. We've cut this stuff back several times. It just keeps growing back more lush every time. Now, over the years, I've grown about 4 or 5 different varieties of Ageratum, or Ageratum, as some people like to say. Some of the varieties kind of stay low to the ground. They don't get very tall. I really like this variety. First year I've grown it, I think it's called High Tide, and so it makes a taller plant. Seems to be a little more bushy, and it's also really good if you want to cut some of the blooms, put them in a vase, take them inside or whatever. So if you're looking for a variety of Ageratum to grow for cut flowers, this High Tide variety would be a great one. Or if you just want something to keep all the little bees happy, it's great for that too. And then we have our carrots, 3 absolutely beautiful beds of carrots. We've got orange carrots here, yellow carrots in that one, and then purple carrots in that one on the end. Now my goal when we planted these beds was to have the carrots planted so thick that you couldn't see a speck of dirt. All you could see is carrot tops. And we have definitely accomplished that. These things are as thick as they can be, and they're little bitty carrot plants everywhere. Now the last time we showed these carrots on a video, not long after they had all germinated, we had several people comment and say, "Ooh, I think you planted those too thick, probably going to need to thin those." But I'm going to stand behind my statement that I have never planted carrots, gone back later and thought I planted them too thick. Now, will we get some small carrots in here because they're planted so thick? Probably so. But from my experiences, once these carrots start forming, they'll just kind of push each other out of the way a little bit. So we should still get some nice ones in here as well. So I'm going to stick to my guns and not thin these carrots because I've never thinned carrots. Now come harvest time, if we get a bed full of tiny carrots, I'll be glad to concede that y'all were right. But we're going to wait and see. We're going to let them grow out this thick and see what happens. Now moving along to our second row of beds here. This is a bed we worked in a couple videos ago. We pulled out half of these potato onions, split them up, planted them in that in-ground plot right over there. Still got a decent amount of potato onions left. We also planted some spinach in that video, which has been kind of slow to come up. Almost has me worried that those seeds I had, maybe I kept them a little too long. We're getting a few little spinach sprouts there, but not coming up near as thick as they should be. So my soil temp was good, and we put plenty of water on those seeds. But as I told you on that video, when we planted that spinach, I'd had that bag of seeds for a few years, so maybe the germination rate has dropped off a little bit. I'm going to give it another week. If I don't see a nice full stand there, I'll give me some more spinach seeds. We still got plenty of time to replant. And then in this next bed, we've got some beautiful Savannah mustard. It wasn't long ago where we cut these back completely to the clean cut over the entire bed, just left about 3 or 4 inches of stalk sticking up there. Took them a week or so to recover. They have grown back nicely. We also fertilized them when we cut them, and they have responded well to that. This second kind of grow out is a lot more green than the first grow out was, and it's about time to harvest these again. And if we look closely here, we can see a little bit of pest damage on these leaves, but not near as much as we normally get on our mustard. And just as a side note to that, I've got an organic pest control product, a relatively new product that we may end up carrying on our website next year. Did some testing with it in the warm season and was pretty pleased with the results. And I've been wanting to do some testing with it in the cool season. We just haven't had that much pest pressure so far. I'm sure we'll get some eventually, but haven't had to spray anything to this point. So hopefully sooner or later, I will get to test that product on some cool season veggies and tell you what I think. And then in the last bed on this row, we've got our Egyptian walking onions, which are still growing great. Got a few of these that have started multiplying at the base, but not all of them have yet. They don't seem to multiply at the base quite as fast as those Louisiana Evergreen Shallots over there that I'll show you in a minute. Now, if you look close here, you may notice some of these leaves look a little burnt. So that happened sometime while we were going camping in the mountains before Thanksgiving. They looked fine before we left, and then saw some of the leaves burn when we got back. Hasn't been cold enough here to really burn onions. So my best guess is that storm we had while we were gone maybe gave them a little wind burn. That's the only thing I can think of. Now, I'm sure they'll be fine. They'll probably recover pretty soon. Not worried about these. Just something interesting to note because I've never really seen that on onions. And then on our third row of beds, we've got a lot of awesome stuff going on in this bed. We've got our forever collards here, which I harvested pretty hard for Thanksgiving. We made a pretty big pot of collards just from those 4 plants there. And you see how those have leaned over a good bit. They were standing upright. That's another reason I think the wind may have damaged those onions there, because it looks like the wind did a number on those forever collards. Got some backups here growing those, some more flash collards, a few more plants in this row, and then right over here we've got those delicious old-timey blue collards. And the guy who sent me these old-timey blue collard seeds told me that these were really good raw, and he's right. These things so tender. You don't really have to cook them. You make a nice little salad out of these. Not really bitter, just got a good greens taste to them. So those are doing great and looking beautiful. I don't know if y'all can see because of the shadows, but they have an awesome little kind of purple coloration on them. Not quite big enough to do a monster harvest, but we have been enjoying snacking on some of these leaves. Oh, and before I forget, 2 things. I think we do still have some of these old-timey blue collard seeds on the website. Still plenty of time to plant collards in most places. And we've recently added these raised beds we have to our website. So you can go check those out. We've got the 17-inch tall ones, the 32-inch tall ones, and the round ones in several different colors. These things will make a great Christmas gift. Really easy to put together. We've loved ours the year and a half we've had them, so you can go to our website lazydogfarm.com and check those out. But anyway, back to what's going on in this bed here. You may recall several weeks ago we planted some lettuce transplants in this bed that looked awful, and I told you that I think I could get them to turn the corner with some watering and some fertilization, and we have done that. These things look great now, and they're well on their way to growing out some nice big lettuce heads for us. And then in our next bed, we've got an absolute jungle of these Louisiana Evergreen Shallots. These things are just everywhere. They almost look like those carrot beds over there. Now, these did get some wind damage, probably a little more than the Egyptian walking onions got, but I think they'll be fine. We've got more green onions here that we can eat. But I just love the way this bed is looking. And then in the last bed on this row, we've just been feeding the bees. Got this basil here that is all flowered out. Just letting it go as long as it can go. It will get killed by the first frost here in a week or 2. We've just been enjoying coming out here, seeing the bees all buzzing around this stuff. Once the frost kills it, we'll get it out of here. We'll have a nice clean bed. Maybe we can do some more cool season succession planting. And speaking of succession planting, we've got a great example of it right here with this nice big lettuce and that smaller lettuce that I showed you earlier. So all these transplants came out of the same tray. We planted this bed first when those transplants were just ready to plant. Then we left the others in there. They got looking rough, but we planted them anyway right over here. And so we're gonna have a nice succession of lettuce going on. This stuff right here is pretty much ready to harvest. We've already been eating some of it. Gonna be going heavy on the lettuce this week as we work our way through this bed. As soon as we're done with this bed, we'll start picking off that bed. And just to give you a closer look here, the heads on this butterhead lettuce haven't completely tightened up yet. Neither has the Cherokee or the romaine back there, but it's big enough to harvest. We're not going to wait until all this stuff forms a nice tight head, because some of it may bolt on us at that point, especially if we get a stretch of warmer days. So we just start cutting it now and enjoying it while we can. And then in this bed, we've got all kind of good stuff going on. Now, we did have some pretty heavy pest pressure on this bed in the beginning, but it seems to have subsided. Still getting a few of those kale leaves munched on there, but not enough for me to worry about. So that's our Black Magic Lacinato kale. Here we have our curly kale. Then a couple weeks ago we threw in a few celery plants right there and got a few rutabaga plants right there. Everything in here is looking great. Nothing in here big enough to harvest yet, but it won't be long. And then in our last bed where we've got this little perennial onion trial going on, we've got some really interesting things happening here as far as comparing all these perennial onion varieties. So some of these look a lot like our Louisiana evergreen shallots or our potato onions over there. These white Welsh bunching onions and these red Welsh bunching onions look a lot like those. Looks like we're getting a little seed head there on the white Welsh onions. We've got those green mountain potato onions back there. Those are probably the most prolific in this bed. Those are growing really, really fast. And some of the other noteworthy varieties in this bed at the moment would be these Etoy onions here. Now these don't get very big, but they multiply like crazy. So when we planted these, we split them up. So we put one plant right here, and now we've got about 10 there. Those other bunches have multiplied out pretty well too. And then this little bunching onion of Madagascar here. I only had one plant make it, and it's not very big, not giving us any groceries. I don't know why, but I just really like this little plant. Now I told you at the beginning of the video that we were going to try to plant some parsnips, and I think we've got enough room in this perennial onion bed here to squeeze in a row. So I'm going to save this space on the outside of the bed. I'll probably put another drip line there eventually and split out some of these onions that are multiplying. So I'm not going to use that space, but the space right down the middle here, I think I can add a drip line right there and we can squeeze in a row of parsnips. So I got my drip line added. Couldn't get it perfectly down the center of the bed the way I have my mainline tubing set up here, but it's close enough. This year we're going to be planting a variety called Lancer. Last year we grew a variety from Johnny's called Javelin. Something tells me this is the same thing, just two different companies with two different names for it. Now, for whatever reason, parsnips don't get as much attention as other cool season root veggies like carrots and beets. But parsnips are easy to grow and they're absolutely delicious. Some fried parsnip chips with a little sea salt on them is one of the best things from the cool season garden. And we want to grow parsnips just like we would carrots. I probably should have planted these when I planted the carrots, just hadn't figured out at that point where I wanted to put them. So we want to plant these thick like we would carrots, but it's important to note that parsnip seeds look nothing like carrot seeds. These seeds are a lot bigger. Sometimes it's hard to get them planted so thick because the seeds are bigger, but we try our best. So we're going to try to squeeze in a double row here. I think we've got enough seeds to do that. So I'm going to make two little tiny furrows on each side of this drip tape. And we'll just start sprinkling our parsnip seeds along that furrow there. Planting them pretty thick. Just grab a pinch, do a little sprinkle, and then we just need to lightly cover them. Much like carrots, we don't need to plant these things very deep at all. And last year in one of those long skinny beds, we grew some parsnips that were almost 2 foot long. So I'm hoping with some good soil nutrition, we can do the same thing here in this bed. So definitely give parsnips a try if you don't already grow them. And let me know in the comments below what you think about my carrots. You think I'm making a mistake by leaving them that thick, or you think they're going to be all right. And don't forget, if you want to try those old-timey blue collards or some of these metal raised beds like we have, you can find both on our website at lazydogfarm.com. And if you struggle getting your carrots to germinate, when we planted these, we made a nice detailed video talking about how to get carrots to germinate well, how to get a nice dense bed of carrots. You can see that right here, so check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.